What is going on, y'all? Welcome to the Mission Ready Men briefing right here on the SHR Media Network, where we train up warriors, not weaklings. Today is Tuesday, August 19th, in the year of our Lord 2025. And this is a show where men can come to get equipped to stand firm, speak truth, and fight back against a culture that is trying to steal your faith, your family, and your freedom. Because the battle that we're in is not just spiritual, not just political, but it's spiritual. And this fight never, ever takes a day off. So we're done pulling punches. The gloves are off and we are getting after it. So follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and Truth Social at Mission Ready Men. And be sure to subscribe to our Rumble and YouTube channels. We've been having some issues with the Rumble channel. Hopefully today it has been resolved. So if you prefer Rumble over YouTube, then you should be able to check it out over there. If not, please be sure to let us know so that we can get that addressed quickly. And if you want to wear the fight, head over to missionreadymen.com, click Shop 7 Armors, and check out all of our great designs over there. All right, I think business is done. It's go time. President Trump, they swore that he was going to start World War III. They swore he was going to get us embroiled into all kinds of forever wars, but instead, he is stacking peace deals like Biden stacks pudding cups. He's got 6 in 1 year, 6 in 7 months, and 7 if you count one of them, which we'll get into. It's that one's kind of up in the air, but like I said, we'll get into that. And you probably haven't really heard about them all because CNN is too busy lecturing you about pronouns or something. And President Trump, he has always projected his vision of peace, and I think he's coming through with that, but it's being ignored by the elites who can't stand that he's succeeding where I'm not even sure if it's really they failed. They just didn't want the peace that he's bringing about. John Kerry famously said that peace in the Middle East is impossible. I'm paraphrasing, but that was his message. And he blew that up in his first term with the Abraham Accords. And he's continuing to blow that up. But there have been 2 big treaties signed. The first one between Armenia and Azerbaijan, ending a 35-year conflict. And he secured rights to build and manage the Trump corridor, sidelined Russia in this whole deal. But Biden was somehow the adult in the room. Biden was supposed to be the guy who was going to restore the United States standing on the world stage. And Trump was the laughingstock, according to them. And doesn't seem to be working out that way. He also secured a treaty between the Democratic Republic of Congo and Rwanda. Rwanda agreed to pull troops, disarm their militias, and economic integration has been established, which stabilizes one of Africa's most violent regions. And the UN's been involved in this since the 90s, and President Trump made a phone call or two and made it happen. And then we have some ceasefires and peace initiatives. Cambodia and Thailand agreed to a ceasefire, agreed to an immediate halt in border fighting, and CNN's top story that week was a TikTok influencer's skincare routine. I kid you not. And so, well, you know what? Let's just get through a couple more of these. He helped broker the ceasefire between Israel and Iran in the 12-day war, and we know how that happened. But it's the first time that they've talked in decades, and I know you got to take that with a grain of salt. Iran has been saying death to Israel and death to America for decades. The fact that they're talking may or may not amount to anything. I'm leaning towards may not. But the fact is, he made that happen too. He got sworn enemies to the table. Whether or not that's going to amount to anything, as I said, we don't know. But Biden didn't even try. He solved the dispute between India and Pakistan, cooled the tensions in Kashmir, and opened up trade channels. But he's the dangerous authoritarian. He's the warmonger. He's the guy that's going to get us embroiled in all these wars. And yet, as I said, he's just stacking up these deals. Egypt and Ethiopia, the Nile River water dispute was resolved. Egypt guaranteed flow. Ethiopia gets to keep their dam. And Biden's biggest foreign policy win was not spilling ice cream on his tie while he was overseas. Even though we know he fell asleep when he was over there, but that's a whole other story. And then if you can count this one or not. He had that ceasefire between between us and the Houthis in Yemen. That's on pause right now. But he got a ceasefire and paused the attacks in the Red Sea and paused the airstrikes from us and the United Kingdom. That's a nebulous one, and I can understand if you don't want to count that one. That's fine. But the fact is, that is more than that's more than Obama did, and he actually got a Nobel Peace Prize. And we're still trying to figure out what made him deserve that. And I don't even know I can't even remember if the American Pravda actually even had an explanation for it. If they did, it was so lame. I just can't remember. But the fact that he got it was lame to begin with. But there's those are the peace deals that he's stacked up in 8 months, 7 or 8 months. And you may be wondering why you haven't heard much about it. If you actually seek out real news, and I'm sure you have, but you haven't heard anything from the likes of the China News Network and MSDNC, soon to be BS Now. I don't know if we'll have time to get into that, but yeah, I'm sure we'll talk about that at some point. But here's a clip I wanted to show you with Scott Jennings on CNN. There it is. And Bakari Sellers, he's supposed to be a lawyer, but he's one of the dumbest people I've seen, and not saying a lot on CNN, because CNN has a bunch of, you know what? Let me not do that. But anyway, Bakari Sellers displaying his unbelievable ignorance about Trump's peace deals. Check this out.
But the man has solved 6 or 7 conflicts this year. I think we ought to give him some latitude to operate.
Which 6 or 7?
I'm sorry, are you not watching the
Which
news?
6 or 7?
Well, we just did Azerbaijan, we did Rwanda, we did Israel, Iran.
Israel, Iran, what? What peace deal did I miss?
Ended the 12-day war.
I mean, you 6 or 7. I mean,
Are you
that's
living on Earth too?
I mean, no, but Azerbaijan, Rwanda, what? What are we talking about?
Casey,
the fact is we still have a country a world that's on fire. And this is the problem with
Casey.
What are you asking me for, Scott?
I'm asking you to come in here and tell people the truth.
That is asking a lot from a CNN host because they are allergic to the truth. And Casey Hunt in particular. Well, I can't even really say in particular. They're all a bunch of lying. Anyway,
Donald Trump has created a track record this year of helping settle several conflicts.
Several is different than 6 or 7. So I was sorry.
I will say this.
We did see, Scott, to your point, after naming something after Donald Trump, we saw Azerbaijan, Armenia sit down. That was a remarkable moment. We also, the Iran situation was solved with force, but
it was it's still not solved. There's still no peace deal, and actually, the hostages are still not brought home in Israel, and they're still uncertain. There's still uncertainty in Gaza and Israel, and we still have this blazing in Ukraine and Russia. So I want to back away from Donald Trump getting a Nobel Peace Prize.
Of course you do. Of course you do, because that would just blow up every narrative that you have. Just completely blow everything out of the water.
But this is my biggest issue.
Donald Trump would not like to back away from that.
But I think this is one of the larger issues you have with Donald Trump when compared to his predecessors. Joe Biden, particularly Barack Obama, and even his competitor in Hillary Clinton, he does not have the intellect to actually display strength on a stage of this magnitude.
Wow, that has got to be, like I said, Bakari Sellers is not. He has some nerve talking about Donald Trump's intellect, but they didn't let Scott Jennings actually enumerate the peace deals and the treaties and everything that Trump negotiated. And then when he was presented with the receipts that they would let him get out, they had nothing except to attack his intellectual prowess. And they got nothing. They got nothing. Just completely flippant, unprepared, and allergic to facts. It's sad, but not unexpected. And I mean, it's the media landscape that we live in 2025. They swore up and down that President Trump was going to get us into wars, get us into World War III. He was going to bring mushroom clouds. But instead, he brought trade corridors, treaties, and ceasefires. As I said before, peace under Trump is ignored because it destroys their narrative. And nothing gets under their skin more than a guy from Queens succeeding, a guy from Queens who is perceived to be their intellectual inferior succeeding where their experts failed. And I think that they're in for a long 3 more years of this, and I am absolutely here for it. On the theme of peace, there was a meeting at the White House, I'm sure you all are aware, between Trump, Zelensky, and several European leaders, Giorgia Meloni and others, Keir Starmer. Anyway, several European leaders. And this was right on the heels of Trump's summit with Putin in Alaska. And so all eyes were on this. And there aren't a lot of details. There was a lot of generalities spoken about, but no specifics. The meeting is described as cordial, and there were no fireworks, unlike the last time Zelensky was in the Oval Office. There was some moments of levity. I don't have the clip, but the same reporter who asked him about his suit the last time said he told him that he looked good in his suit. I don't know. I don't think he had a jacket on and a collared shirt, but I don't think he had a tie on. It kind of looked like he did in at some angles, but I don't think he did. But regardless, he still was dressed appropriately, I thought. But that reporter asked him about it, told him he looked good, and then Zelensky fired back and said, "I'm wearing a new suit, and you're wearing the same suit the last time I was here," which had the room laughing a little bit, which I thought was good. Some of the things that they talked about, obviously, Zelensky is bent on security guarantees, which is not unreasonable considering what is happening. But him joining Ukraine joining NATO is a non-starter for Russia. Not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. But Trump has promised that there will be some good protection for Ukraine. Again, no specifics, but we'll see. We'll see how this all shakes out. European leaders want a ceasefire agreement before they move forward with a peace deal, and Trump is trying to bypass that, just go straight to peace talks. I can see benefits in either case, but he said that a ceasefire could disadvantage one side or the other tactically. We'll see how this thing shakes out. The fact that this is even happening on any level is more than we could say for anything that happened during the Biden administration. I'm not even sure he was aware half the time that there was a conflict between Russia and Ukraine. Honestly, I think he probably had to be reminded before he went out and spoke about it. His brain was mush. Is mush. But this is something that President Trump is getting a lot of praise for, and deservedly so. Deservedly so. Again, the European leaders, they want certain things to be included, security guarantees, and a recognition and something to be done about the children that have been kidnapped and the human rights issues that human rights violations that are being committed by Russia. Obviously, all well-deserved concerns, and we're just going to have to see how this plays out. Like I said, there were no specifics offered at the conclusion of this meeting. No concrete deals announced. Territory, giving up territory, sanctions, NATO status, all of that is still unresolved. Although, as I said, joining NATO is a non-starter, and giving up the territory, I think Zelensky's going to have to for this to go forward, because in the history of warfare, countries' territory gets conquered all the time. Borders change all the time through conquest and conflict. It happens. And the victors don't ever just give that territory back. Russia invaded. They took the territory. They took territory that was Russian speaking to begin with. I don't see them giving that territory back without. I just don't see it. I just don't see it. And so again, as I said, we will see how this all shakes out. They're based on what transpired yesterday in that meeting. It could be as soon as 2 weeks, within the next 2 weeks, that a trilateral meeting between Trump, Zelensky, and Putin could take place. We'll see how that works out. I hope it doesn't take place in Moscow, frankly, but somewhere, some neutral territory of some kind. Ukraine, the European Union, they want to make sure in this thing that Ukraine just doesn't give away everything. Their sovereignty, they don't want to give away. Don't want them to give away everything, and Russia wants to get everything. I mean, let's be honest. If Putin could have his greatest wish, it would be to have the USSR put back together, the Soviet Union back together, all of it. And that's just not. I mean, the foreign minister showed up in Alaska last week with the CCP or CCCP Soviet Union symbol on a sweatshirt. We know what they want. It's just going to be a matter of Trump negotiating a deal that both sides can live with. But right now we have a lot of optics, not a whole lot of substance. So we'll see how that shakes out. We'll see how that shakes out. I think it's gonna be good, and I think that if President Trump does not get a Nobel Peace Prize, that will be a scandal, despite what Bakari Sellers says. All right, y'all. We have a lot more to get to. And let's see. All right, we're making some good time. So let's get a word in from our sponsor. And our sponsor for today's show is Patriot Mobile. And Patriot Mobile is the country's only Christian conservative wireless carrier. And let's be honest, your vote right now is not enough. You need to make sure that your dollars go to companies, go to businesses that believe in what you believe in and that fight for what you believe in. That's why we switched to Patriot Mobile, because they don't just talk about the things that are important to them. They don't just talk about their values. They actually back them up. A portion of every dollar that you spend with them goes to pro-life, pro-family, and pro-freedom organizations. So right now you can get a free month of service when you go to patriotmobile.com and use promo code Jackson. Call 972-PATRIOT and use promo code Jackson. Defend freedom with every call, every text, every month. Switch to Patriot Mobile today. patriotmobile.com/Jackson. All right, y'all. I am Big E, and you are watching or listening to the Mission Ready Men briefing on the SHR Media Network, where you can catch Sackhead Sean with the Edge of Liberty every Monday and Wednesday at 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific. The Reaver of Common Sense with Jersey Joe every Monday and Friday at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. and BZ with the Berserk Bobcat Saloon every Tuesday and Thursday at 11 p.m. Eastern and 8 p.m. Pacific. And that means he's going to be on this evening. He'll be on this evening at 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 Pacific. Please be sure to check out his show, to check out all these great shows. Like and subscribe to them, share them, and help us have a huge breakthrough. Pray for us that we have a huge breakthrough this year to reach as many people as we possibly can. And we are at, I believe, 598 subscriptions on YouTube. So please help us get to 600 and then 700 and then 1,000. So share this with everyone that you know and help us get the word out. All right, now back to our regularly scheduled programming. The geniuses in charge of America's most dangerous inner cities just don't get it. They don't get it. Crime is exploding. Gangs run in the streets. Schools are war zones. But they've got solutions, apparently. More social workers, more government programs, bigger government checks, and rainbow painted crosswalks. What could possibly go wrong? But the real question, what if the root problem is not a lack of programs? What if the real problem is not a lack of drag queen story hour and pornographic books in school library? But what if the root problem is a lack of fathers? I think we all know the answer to that. The chaos in the inner cities, these leftist-run cities like Chicago and New York and LA, the stats are irrefutable. 70% of juveniles in state-run institutions come from fatherless homes. 85% of youth in prison grew up without a father. Neighborhoods with the highest rates of single-parent households see triple the homicide rates. Triple. That's insane. The whole thing is insane. And when it comes to Black children, 37% of Black children live with both biological parents. And I'm actually kind of surprised it's that high, to be honest. 48% live in single parent homes, usually with the mother. And Black fathers, 72% of Black fathers have had children out of wedlock. That's insane. So all of this means that more than 50% of all Black children are not living in intact two biological parent households. But I'm sure TikTok dances and safe space workshops will fix that, right? So what's the solution? Well, the solution is God's standard for the family. Genesis 2:24, God created men and women in order to build a family. Be fruitful and multiply. And that is obviously within the context of a marriage. Ephesians 6:4, fathers are called to raise their children up in the training and discipline of the Lord. But I guess God missed the memo from all these modern leftist progressives who believe that dads are optional. They're accessories. When dads are left out, when they're not present, gangs end up as surrogate families. Gang leaders end up as surrogate fathers. Government checks and proceeds from drug deals replace a father's provision, replace God's provision. And the culture that we live in right now mocks masculinity and to a certain extent glorifies deadbeat dads. But nothing screams empowerment, I guess, like having a drug dealer as your life coach, as your surrogate father. And the consequences of this type of chaos is overwhelming. High school dropout rates are higher. Substance abuse, instances of substance abuse are higher. And there's a cycle of generational poverty and violence that is extremely difficult to break out of. They see it as normal. They see it as just the way things are, and it doesn't have to be that way. Judges, the book of Judges, chapter 17, verse 6. Everyone did what was right in their own eyes. And what that basically boils down to, I mean, we see it in places like DC prior to President Trump's federal takeover, obviously, where we've seen the crime rate drop significantly. But in places like New York and Chicago, when you take out dads, when you remove dads from the home, when dads abandon their responsibilities, you have Lord of the Flies with an EBT card. That's what it boils down to. It's that kind of chaotic existence. Because the world thinks that the solution is more government programs, more therapists, DEI slogans, cries of racism. But God offers a restoration of fatherhood through repentance, responsibility, discipline, and discipleship. And if we can get that to be the standard going forward, we won't need President Trump to send in the troops. We won't need federalization of inner cities like we saw in DC, because the dads will take care of that. The dads will make sure that there are no roving bands of 13, 14, 15-year-old kids carjacking people at 3 o'clock in the morning. Experts say that we need community-based interventions. But God invented that 2,000 years ago, and it's called the church. It's called family. Well, family obviously was invented long before that, but you get my point. If we have intact families, present fathers, raising their children in a godly way, we don't have anywhere near this kind of issue. Not even close. To to see a criminal, a juvenile criminal, if we had that kind of structure in our society, that would be so newsworthy because it would be so rare. But here we are. So how do we solve this? Well, as I mentioned, the Bible gives us a solution. Fathers need to step up. They need to step up as mentors and spiritual leaders and heads of their households. And for the single mothers that are out there, men need to step up and be a support system for those single mothers and fatherless kids in the community. And that's where the church would step in. We have to break the cycle of this generational crime, generational poverty, by modeling ourselves after the model of manhood that Christ presented to us in the Bible. Because your son's biggest role model can't be a rapper bragging about having the bail money to get out of jail. Because if that's your son's role model, congratulations, you played yourself. You have abdicated your role as a father. And for the women, I'm probably gonna make some enemies here, but I don't care because it has to be said. Stop lowering your standards. Don't reward men with your bodies who refuse to take the responsibility of what happens next. Refuse to build a life with someone who won't commit under God's design for marriage. Proverbs 31, the virtuous woman builds her house. She doesn't hand it over to fools. We got far too many fools out here fathering kids and then just disappearing, bouncing. Stop treating fatherhood like an optional add-on package. That's what the government wants, but we don't have to give it to them. If a man wants the privileges of a husband, he needs to sign up for the job. Period. And so crime in the inner city is not just about poverty, and it has absolutely nothing to do with racism, despite what these left-wing lunatics will have you believe. It's about faithlessness and fatherlessness. That's it. Faithlessness and fatherlessness. We solve those two things and we can avoid the fall of the nation. Strong fathers, godly families with Christ at the center. That's the solution. But yeah, let's follow the left's the left's model and keep pretending that drag queen story hour will stop drive-by shootings. I propose we try something even more radical than that. Dads actually being dads and women expecting nothing less. All right, rant over. But you know I'm right. But we're sticking with the theme of violence from another angle, though. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. So another weekend, another mass shooting, this time in New York, 11 shot, 3 dead, all in a city that brags to no end about having the toughest gun laws in America. The criminals didn't read that memo. There was an argument at a club in New York at 3:30 in the morning. Nothing good happens after 2 o'clock in the morning. Nothing good happens after 11 o'clock at night in these places. Let's be honest. But there was a shooting in a club. Multiple shooters, apparently. There was an argument of some kind that turned into a shooting war with 11 shot, as I said, and 3 dead. Multiple shooters, because of course. And it was a gun-free zone, obviously. Obviously, it was a gun-free zone. Now, it was a club. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that beyond a shadow of a doubt, if there had been a good guy with a gun, that might have mitigated the issue. That's not necessarily true. Even in free states, a lot of places it is illegal to carry a gun in a place where they get more than 51% of their revenue from alcohol, which a club fits that description. So I don't know that a good guy, unless it was a cop in the club, would have stopped it. But the fact remains, it was a gun-free zone. And obviously, as I said, the criminals didn't get the memo. The criminals didn't read the sign. And we can have a debate about whether or not it should be illegal for you to not be allowed to carry a gun into an establishment that serves alcohol like that. My contention is that people who take the responsibility seriously of carrying a weapon are not going to get themselves into a situation where they're too drunk to effectively use their weapon in a situation like that. So we'll see what the investigation bears out. But the fact is that the law-abiding citizens in that club were sitting ducks. And it was just another gun-free zone massacre. Now, New York City's, one of the things they're most proud of is their iron wall, so to speak, of gun laws. All the permits, all the places where guns are banned, all the hoops you have to go through to be able to carry a gun legally. It's just, it's ridiculous. It has effectively neutered the Second Amendment in New York, and it's still one of the most violent cities in the country. The left likes to say that places with the most permissive gun laws are have higher murder rates. I'm going to look into that because I just heard that again today, and didn't have time to really dig into it before the show today. But I don't think that's true. I think they're cherry picking data and manipulating data to be able to make that claim. But we'll see. Hey, Kiwi Lass, thanks for joining us. I just noticed your chat here. Thank you for being here. I appreciate it. So yeah, the gun laws that are in place in New York work fantastic if you're a criminal, because you know that unless you see a police officer confront you, you're going to be able to pretty much get away with whatever you want. And of course, after the shooting, the left said, we need more gun control. We need more gun control. Well, how much more gun control do you need? Because you have the most restrictive, some of the most restrictive gun. It's a toss up between Chicago, New York, and California. Who knows? But we'll give it to them for the sake of this discussion. But it doesn't work. It doesn't work because you have 3 dead and 11 shot in one night, in one incident. It doesn't work. It has never worked. And then you add on top of that the revolving door of the jails in these places, where the DAs just give people slaps on the wrist and send them on their way with a desk appearance ticket, only to have them commit crimes not even 24 hours later. There have been so many stories of criminals being let out of jail in New York and other places before the cops even finish the paperwork, only to go out and commit another crime that very night. But yeah, what could possibly go wrong in a situation like that? Gun-free zones they amount to shooting galleries for the bad guys. They are target-rich environments. Innocent people who want to defend themselves get punished, while the criminals are emboldened to just do whatever they want to do with impunity. It turns out that a sign that says no guns allowed is not the equivalent of kryptonite for these criminals. It's just not. Shocking as it may be, shocking as that may be, it's not. This was not a failure of the Second Amendment. This was yet another example of the gun control clown show, because it's gun control has killed more people than a gun permit. I don't care what these leftists say about the murder rates in places like Texas and Florida. The fact is that when people have the ability to protect themselves, the criminals understand that, and the criminals, they don't want to get shot. They want to be the one doing the shooting, and if they think that there's a possibility that they could get shot, then they're going to take their business elsewhere. Gun control, a gun-free zone, turned into a war zone. And New Yorkers are stuck under the tyranny of these ridiculous gun laws. And just down I-95 in DC residents are actually catching a break, because President Trump, in his federalization of DC, has cut through that nonsense, and he is restoring the rights of residents of DC to protect themselves. So we're going to get into that next. For years, DC treated the Second Amendment like a curse word. The Second Amendment was, these people just hate the Second Amendment. They don't want people to be able to protect themselves. And while they were doing that, carjackings and murders skyrocketed. And Trump has handed residents a radical new idea, and that is to be able to protect themselves. I will never forget. I used to live in DC years ago, and I will never forget. I mentioned this in the chat in I think it was on BZ's show a week or two ago when this first started. But I used to live in DC, and I will never forget hearing. We used to hear gunshots all the time, but I will never forget hearing about 12 to 15 shots and thinking somebody just died. And the next morning, there was a story on the news about an off-duty police officer. I can't remember if it was a Fed or a local cop. It's been so long, I can't remember those details. But somebody tried to carjack this person. I believe it was a woman, and they said not today. And the person who tried to carjack him ended up with a bunch of bullet holes. That would be a deterrent if more people were allowed to protect themselves in that way. But President Trump has changed the policy in DC, because gun permits in DC were taking about 4 months on average to get processed, and it's been shortened now to days. And he streamlined the process to be able to own and conceal carry weapons in DC. And I know a lot of people who would go to DC, would conduct business in DC, but they're not allowed to carry. There's no reciprocity for people who can carry in Virginia and I believe Maryland. I can't remember what Maryland's policies like, but definitely in Virginia. And people just don't go. They avoid it because they'd be sitting ducks. They wouldn't be able to defend themselves like that cop I just told you about. So the policy has changed, and you no longer need to wait 4 to 6 months to own a handgun in DC, and that is fantastic. We'll see what happens if Congress doesn't allow Trump to continue this federalization after 30 days. We'll see if they revert it back. That's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. But decades of so-called common sense gun reform has left citizens of places like DC and Chicago and LA and Oakland. It has left those people helpless. And the police can't be everywhere at once. They respond after something has happened. Every now and then you might be blessed enough to deal with something like that in the presence of a police officer who can intervene immediately, but that's rare. The criminals already have the guns. They already have the guns. The only people who have ever been disarmed by these ridiculous gun control laws, policies, are law-abiding citizens who are left, as I mentioned before, sitting ducks. Trump just gave the people the green light to protect themselves, and that is fantastic. DC is finally under federal direction, acknowledging the Constitution. Critics say that this is going to make us less safe, but the murder rate of under these ridiculous bans and these draconian laws was what, a success story? It's being framed by the administration as a part of a law and order crackdown on a city that the local leadership couldn't manage, and they obviously couldn't. They obviously couldn't. There have been over 400 arrests in DC since Trump took it over and sent in the troops and sent in the federal law enforcement agencies. All it took was a new president. All it took was someone with the will to get it done. I mean, this should be a blueprint for every blue city dealing with this crime epidemic. This should be a blueprint. But when you look at the mayors of these blue cities like Chicago and LA and Oakland, they are railing against it, saying that it's racist. But do you not see what you're doing when you say that? You're admitting that there's a problem. You're admitting that the people committing these crimes are minorities. And so what? It's okay because they're minorities? And we shouldn't crack down? We shouldn't actually enforce the law? Because that's what it sounds like you're saying. But anyway, the bad guys in DC won't be the only ones armed anymore. Thank God. Thank God. Gun control delivers crime, chaos, and body bags. And President Trump just delivered to DC the Constitution. And how ironic is that? He has finally given the people of DC a fighting chance. I am looking forward to seeing how this experiment works, because I suspect, just based on the past week, that when all is said and done, and the federalization of DC does end, whether it's in 30 days or longer, that the citizens of DC are not going to want to go back to the way it was. I could be wrong. I could be wrong. They could be gluttons for punishment. I don't think so, but we'll see. All right. I wanted to get to this thing that it was a piece in the New York Times by it was an interview by Ross Douthat, and he was interviewed by Nwanibu, or however you pronounce it, and he wrote this book, The Right of the People. I thought I'd have time to really get into it. It's it deserves more than the time we have left. So I'll get to that next time. And that's going to cut down on my prep time for the next show. Yeah, that was a little selfish of me, I know. But anyway, That's going to do it. That's going to do it for us this time. I will keep trying to make each episode better than the last. If any of what I said hit home for you, please take a second to like and subscribe and share with everyone that you know, because we're not just here to opine. We're not just here to bloviate. We're here to spread the word, spread the gospel of Jesus Christ, carry the banner of faith, freedom, and hope for future generations. And if you want some cool gear, like the shirt that I have on, head over to missionreadymen.com and hit Shop 7 Armors and check out all the great designs that we have over there about bold faith, true grit, and unapologetic patriotism. And as always, when seconds count, the police are only minutes away, but the Lord is right there with you. So keep your prayers going up and your head on a swivel. God bless.